I know it's hard to believe, but Advent is just over 2 weeks away. Our guests this evening are a husband and wife with a new book to help your family celebrate the season of Advent. Rebecca and Stephen Grabill are the co-authors of The Joy of Advent, Family Celebrations for Advent and the 12 Days of Christmas. Rebecca Grabill is an award-winning author of children's books as well as a homeschooling mother of 6. She's published a wide array of fiction, essays, and poetry for all age levels. Stephen Grabill is a theologian as well as co-author and executive producer of the film series For the Life of the World, which has reached more than 1.5 million viewers. He has 20 years' experience as a senior research theologian, author, speaker, and editor. Together, their new book that we'll talk about this evening helps us prepare for the season and well into Christmas. I know, hard to believe Advent is here. Welcome to the Busted Halo Show, Stephen and Rebecca Grabill.
So great to be here. Thank you.
Thanks.
Where are you guys coming to us from? You've got the fire going. It's very homey and cozy.
Love it.
Is this your
Grand
living
Rapids,
room?
Michigan.
Oh,
we are
Grand-
from
oh, sure,
Grand
yeah,
Rapids,
yeah.
Michigan.
Oh, very nice. The Paulist Fathers serve at the cathedral there, St. Andrews in Grand Rapids.
Yes, indeed they do.
You're familiar with our work. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
And I am familiar with your work. This book that was sent to me actually a little while ago. Beautiful. We said, well, I can't wait for Advent to come because it's just gorgeous. Very nicely put together. Not just the visuals, though. But this is really not just, it's another sort of Advent devotional. This is geared for, hey, let's not just have church when we're in church. This is how our family enters into a prayerful season together, right?
Yeah.
Right,
And really,
exactly.
this is how we do, the Grabills do domestic church.
Okay.
And we didn't start off thinking that, but we've lived into this concept, this reality over the last 20 years. So 20 years ago, our Advent celebration did not look like this, but it has really gotten to this point of development through a lot of development and time and trial and error.
Yeah, it's something that the Lord started growing in our family more than 20 years ago, and kind of we've grown into it. And it has been part of, I think, the pull for us to come to the Catholic Church in general. And it has just been a cornerstone for our family. Like the memories our kids carry, even our adult kids, the memories they have of doing Advent are some of their richest, most treasured memories that they want to recreate that in their generation and beyond. So that's part of why it just seemed like time to put this together, in a book form, because it had blessed our family
Exactly.
so much.
Well, and you guys just used a term that is often heard from old celibate men. So I'd rather hear how you two define the domestic church. What does that mean to you guys?
So what that means is how we do faith formation in our families. And this particular book, The Joy of Advent, is focused around Advent and the Christmas seasons, but it's not the only thing we do for faith formation, but it's really our entry point, our on-ramp into truly the liturgical tradition and experience, and our sort of the tractor beam pulling us into the church over the years. And so we're converts, and this, I would say, our beginning work in Advent and Christmas is really the place where it began. In many ways.
I think that was kind of where God got that hook in and started just running the reel,
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just started there and just kept pulling. And as far as domestic church goes, the faith grows at home. I think there's an issue in our current culture of a lot of kids who grew up, in the faith, don't end up carrying it through. They leave the church in their young adulthood. And why? And I think there's an answer to that. There's a solution to that. And one of the solutions is don't outsource faith formation.
Yeah.
Your church starts with mom and dad around the dinner table. And your children's faith, those seeds get planted there. They get watered there. And obviously, it's really vital to go to Mass every week. But if you're just going to Mass every week,
it's not enough.
And you're not bringing it home and living it out with your kids. It's easy for them to grow up and not know what everything means.
Well, we're talking about the Domestic Church with authors Rebecca and Stephen Grabill. They are the co-authors of The Joy of Advent, Family Celebrations for Advent and the 12 Days of Christmas. I'm curious about, you say you're converts to the Catholic faith, and part of this is what drew you to the faith, seeing the way in which we can liturgically celebrate seasons. Would you say that, though, I mean, I think in other experiences of Christianity, other denominations or non-denominational Christianity, that there kind of is, maybe even in some sense, more of a tradition of, let's say, families having Bible studies, or maybe there's more homeschooling or whatnot. And the Catholic Church is maybe kind of catching up with that a little bit. Is that fair to say?
Probably, yeah. I mean, in our parish, there's a lot of emphasis on faith formation.
Yeah.
But in our wider experience, we know that there really is, it's sort of go to mass, come home, talk about it maybe a little bit, but it's not sort of an integrative center in some homes. And what our experience within the evangelical world prior to our conversion is really this Bible study. And what we're trying to do is go deep in the faith with our family and with other families, actually, and in the context of the church and what the church has to offer. So a huge amount of research went into this over these last 20 years. And there's so many sources that I think are really valuable to mine down on.
Yeah.
This is a book 20 years in the making.
It really was 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember sitting there at the dining room table with our oldest son, who was 3 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And he's, tearing into that little advent calendar with the chocolates behind each cardboard door.
Right.
And I thought, this can't be all there is to the build up to Christmas. There's got to be more. There's got to be a way to make Christmas meaningful, and for him to grow up understanding what is really going on with Christ becoming enfleshed as a baby. And, that led us to the Jesse tree tradition, which then led us to, realizing that multiple ages needed different types of resources to be served, and lots of families with lots of kids. We've got teenagers, we've got toddlers, and they need different things.
Exactly. And attention spans are different.
Yeah. It sounded a little bit like you were having a sale. We've got teenagers. We've got toddlers. How much? We'll give them away.
We'll give you a great deal.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I just saw Rebecca elbow see. Oh, stop it. No, wait.
Yes.
There are jokes. See what you've done. I told you not to do it like that. So let's, I think, if you don't mind, I think it'd be fun and maybe interest piquing for some of our listeners to talk about some of the specific things you have here. I just love the fact, because I've never seen in any Advent preparatory materials, Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Story is so rich. So Joseph, he's in the genealogy of Christ, so he fits in with the Jesse tree, which is an ancient tradition, that springs from the prophecy in Isaiah, shoot shall rise from the stump of Jesse. But that coat is so rich with meaning. It was an inheritance. It was beautiful, but it was also like a man's coat was not just something he threw on before he went outside. It was something that he passed down to future generations. And Joseph receiving that coat is symbolic of him receiving the blessing of his father. And that passing of blessing from generation to generation, it starts with Noah, really, but even Abraham being blessed to be a blessing, you can trace that line that turns, scarlet as you trace it far enough. You can trace it all the way to Christ, to his birth, and then ultimately to his death on the cross, because that's what that blessing is.
Yeah.
So that's what one of the things, we're doing is tracing that scarlet thread from creation all the way through, and just showing where God is putting in place his plan for salvation in these figures, in these stories, like all the way from the beginning.
Yeah, so you've got some like that that people wouldn't necessarily expect, but obviously also very familiar things. The Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which thank you as converts for including in your book.
Of course.
Because it certainly, it wouldn't surprise you that, plenty of people come into the Catholic Church and they're happy to be here, and yet they still have a few little footnotes. Yeah, but one of them.
Yes.
And as converts, that's something that I think we're still growing into. Like,
sure.
One of the things that we heard shortly after coming into the church was that conversion is a lifelong process. It doesn't just happen immediately.
Exactly.
And
one of the things we have discovered just over this process of coming into the church is that you really can't understand the baby born at Christmas without understanding his mother, which is all about Advent. And that's so huge.
Yes.
And that's it. You didn't ask me this question, but if you were to ask me the question, why do so many Protestants and evangelicals not really get into Advent? It's because ultimately, in terms of the riches of the church, they don't know what to do with Jesus's mother, which is so focused in Advent.
Yes.
And that's a huge reason. So it's all the buildup is to one day, not the season of expectation, and then the Christmastide season, which is a celebration of all these events in Jesus's life and some of the early saints, which we also feature in the book.
And appropriately that you would use the term season of expectation, because I talked about how the celibate men describe things in family. But even for a second, I'm going to get Stephen out of the picture and ask you, Rebecca, because I mean, one of the more obvious metaphors and images about Advent, it is we are walking along with Mary during this pregnancy.
Oh, completely. And honestly, that has been so much richer for me since coming into the church, because I think what Protestants tend to do is they've got Mary in the nativity set, and that's the only place that they are allowed to have her. And she's not present anywhere else. And even the fact that, she's growing this child for 9 months in her body, like that is not something that was ever talked about. That wasn't a part of my tradition, of my celebrating before. So celebrating with Mary just as a woman is super exciting. It's just beautiful. And some of the people that we've pulled out for the book are really, they're early whispers of Mary. There's a lot more types of, like, the theological, typology. Somebody might be a type of Christ. So, they're
that means kind of a foreshadowing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's lots of types of Mary in scripture too. And that was just gorgeous and surprising for me to discover as I worked on this book, honestly.
Well, the book we're talking about is The Joy of Advent, Family Celebrations for Advent and the 12 Days of Christmas with Rebecca and Stephen Grabill. What would you say as you were, as you said, for 20 years, assembling this together, what felt like, we've heard other people talk about Advent, and probably there's a lot of Catholics and Christians that have celebrated Advent well, but here's one thing, like, that we think we uniquely want to share, and we haven't seen this other places, and we want to get this message out about preparing for Advent.
Go ahead, sweetie.
Well, I think one of the key things for us that was a new realization was that, you're preparing not just for a single day. You're preparing for a whole season. Like, Christmas is not one day, it's 12 days,
Yeah.
And that takes a little bit of the pressure off, I think, as a parent, especially, of oh, you've got to make everything magical, everything special, everything meaningful, because you've just got that one day. And if somebody's grumpy or if somebody has the flu, then it's done. And you have to wait till next year. Well, no, you don't. You have 12 whole days to celebrate.
And what we've also found as we've structured our worship and celebration around the beginning of Advent, which we start on December 1. We know Advent starts on different days, but for a book, you have to kind of make a decision.
Yeah.
But from December 1 through January 5, we have something for all of those days. And if you do those 37 days in a row, and it's just engage it in some way, you will have an intentional seasons of worship. And what we have found in our own lives, what we've seen in our kids' lives, what others have seen as they've engaged with our daily Advent calendar through joyofadvent.com, which is an email that can come into your inbox, is that they have had an experience like they've not had before with Advent, because they're just sticking with it. It's nothing that we're doing. It's about sticking with Advent and keeping your mind focused for those 37 days. It's a new habit, which is amazing. It has amazing spiritual riches.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And you mentioned intentionality. Obviously, at some point, presumably at some point in your family's life, you decided, okay, let's not just let this go by. When was that, and what was that like for you all to say, we want to be intentional about this season?
I think that's something that we have had to recommit to every single year, because honestly, intentionality is hard. It's really hard.
It's not once and done.
Right.
It's not once and done. And it's a matter of how many seasons do you get to the end of the season and think, wow, I really wish that I had, before you start to say, before the season, okay, what can I actually do? You know, what's reasonable? Can we sit down and have a family dinner a few times a week? Can we collect the kids before the, rush of brushing teeth and bedtime to, watch a video of A Christmas Carol or something? And sometimes intentionality can just be that simple, like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good, which a lot of people do, which we did early on. And so it had to be just right. We had to get all the content out, et cetera, et cetera. And what we have found is over the years, when we have come home from a busy day, and us, the parents, are inclined to say, oh, we may not need to do that today. Our kids say to us, hey, what about Advent? Let's do Advent.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
We can't not do it, Mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's when that's the payoff. Seriously.
Okay, that's the payoff.
That's the payoff.
Yeah. And when you have your young adult kids who think they're too old because, they think this celebration at this dining table is too, it's for the little kids. By the time you're kind of wrapping up with the final prayer and you're getting ready to blow out the candle, you look around and you see that they have drifted from corners of the house and they're standing in the doorways because they can't keep themselves away.
Yeah.
So that's part of the gift.
That is beautiful. We will put a link on our radio blog to your site, Joy of Advent, so that people can kind of find some of these resources. So bustedhalo.com/radio, also where you can pick up the great book, beautifully illustrated, from Paraclete Press. And before we let you go, we've got some family traditions of our own here on Team Busted Halo. Krista has a 3-year-old and a 5-month-old beginning some new domestic church intentionality about seasons. Krista, I'll let you pick the brain of our expert.
So let's, I guess I can, so what's kind of one easy entryway tradition for someone that's like, I want to do this, but I feel really overwhelmed because I have 2 small children, that sort of thing. Where you're like, okay, I don't know if I can take on all of this. What's one thing that I can take on to institute?
One super, super, super simple thing is before bed, select a prayer and pray that prayer, like a special Advent prayer. Pray that prayer over your child, something short, something simple. And it doesn't have to be different every day. It could even be something that you memorize, and they end up memorizing it with
Yes.
you, so that as they're falling asleep, that prayer is kind of playing over in their head. And I mean, that's a treasure you give them now, and it's a treasure that they can,
Yes.
keep with them in the long run.
That's
And of
great,
course-
because we know that Krista's 3-year-old daughter Carmen loves Christmas.
Yes.
She says it all year long. Merry Christmas. So maybe now she'll start to embrace Advent a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And she did memorize the Hail Mary from us just saying it over and over again.
Yeah,
so she can
exactly.
memorize something else. So that'll be great.
Well, you guys, thank you so much for spending some time with us this evening. Rebecca and Stephen Grabill, their new book, The Joy of Advent, Family Celebrations for Advent and the 12 Days of Christmas, available now. And there's a link on our radio blog, bustedhalo.com/radio. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you
It's
so much.
great to be here.
Really happy.
You're welcome.